Eagles Entertainment.
Eagle Eye in the Sky is fueled by Gatorade, the official sports drink of the Philadelphia Eagles.
Anything that moves, I don't care who it is. Let's go. Give me everything you got. Play fast, play hard. Let's beat these boys tonight in their house. It's party time. It's party time. Here we go. Touchdown!
You're listening to the Eagle Eye in the Sky podcast. Now here's your host, Fran Duffy.
That's right, another week, and we are talking a little bit of O-line this week as the Eagle Eye in the Sky podcast, fueled by Gatorade, continues. I'm Fran Duffy, and as always, I think we've got a great show for you here on episode number 248. At the top of this week's show, we've got Chalk Talk, where I chat with Eagles right tackle Lane Johnson about Lane's offseason, the injury to Brandon Brooks, some of his young teammates down there in the trenches, and what he's got going on away from the field as well, including the O-Line Masterminds Summit, an awesome event that Lane helped organize where he brings in a bunch of the top offensive linemen in the NFL all into one room to talk shop. It's the third year of the event. Now, it happens a couple weeks from now, and while I won't be down there this year, I know they've got big plans for the weekend when it comes to making each guy better. We'll hit on all of that a little bit here on the show, but we've got a lot to cover. Let's not waste any more time. Let's dive into our chat now in Chalk Talk.
Let's get down to business. It's time for Chalk Talk.
Well, excited to be talking to Eagles offensive tackle Lane Johnson. And Lane, thanks for joining me here, man. I guess we'll start things off first. How you feeling? It's got to be a little bit of a different offseason, obviously. I'm interested to see how you feeling physically. Where are you at this point as we get ready for the start of the 2020 season?
Feeling good, ramping up workouts. Really want to hit training camp, with the feet going strong. So other than that, man, yeah, we've been pretty consistent as far as the workouts. We were doing them team-based as far as what we were doing. Now it's kind of individual stuff and really just playing it by ear as far as training camp. I've heard late July, but really who knows?
Sure. How different was this experience for you from this offseason compared to last offseason and the ones beyond that, between on-field workouts and obviously the team meeting experience had to be a little bit different as well, right?
Yeah, I mean, OTAs is a good time for, vets to meet newcomers that are coming in, get adjusted, build those relationships. And, we just did it digitally this year. And our O-line coach, Jeff Stoutland, he's not a fan of technology, but he did well with it. So we did class time. And, so, we had to adjust, but we made the most of it.
Let me ask you, with this offseason too, obviously with Jason Peters not in that offensive line room with you, did the young guys look to you more as kind of more of an elder statesman? And did you kind of feel that this offseason compared to years before?
Yeah, I think with Kels and Brandon, who've been in there longer than me, really they just, and even Isaac, the last question, just by experience, just, they try to teach the older players through the young players and vice versa. So he does a good way with that. But yeah, as far as, meeting these guys, it's been cool hearing from where they came from as far as their background and stuff like that. So, but it's been pretty weird.
So you brought up Brandon, and I got to ask you, man. Obviously, I was crushed last week when I saw the news of his injury. I know how close you guys are. Take us to when you found out, when you heard the news. What was your instant reaction?
Man, I texted him asking him if he wanted any Ritas. They had some delivered to my house, and he said, "No, man." I said, "Are you good?" He said, "No, I tore my Achilles today," and I thought he was joking, but he was serious. Yeah, man, just. It's a tough blow, but how he handles situations is pretty extraordinary. Even last year, nobody comes off, especially that size, off an Achilles injury at the end of the playoffs and come back and be the best player in the league. Just watching that was pretty cool. So being around him, being around guys like him, Kelsey, some tough dudes, man. So they bring out the best and. Really, I even look to those guys for leadership too, just because they've been in a little bit longer than I have.
Sure. Hey, you talked about his resiliency, his ability to fight through adversity. He was days after the injury, he's doing media interviews. He's active on social media. Just seeing his mindset and even being down there at the O-Line Masterminds with you guys last year as he was still kind of finishing up his rehab. His mindset allows him to get through these things so well.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of times, man, he puts his head down, he internalizes stuff, and just works. Like, even this past offseason, he leaned down to, 325 and, had a six-pack, was looking unreal, trains all the time. Really just watching his mindset from the previous injuries, really, nothing phases him. He kind of scratches it off. He's just a big bear, man. You're not going to hurt him. You may keep him down, but he's always coming back. So I think he'll make a full recovery and come back and be even better.
I was down there with you guys at the O-line Masterminds last summer, and we talked about like your guys' chemistry. How long does it take to kind of formulate that relationship just purely on field with that communication with you guys, both run game and pass game?
Yeah. When you get drafted, they hope to get you immediately feeling like that. So, I mean, really with everything, we do so many reps day in, day out, have those conversations, have meeting time to where we get to know each other pretty well and how we operate. So, being with here, the past 2 or 3 years with Brandon's been the best years of my career. And, man, it's going to be weird not taking the field with him.
Yeah, no question. You mentioned some of the young guys that have come in, some of the draft picks from this year. I want to ask you about some of the guys that have been here over the last year or two, and we'll start with Matt Pryor. He was on Dave Spinaro's podcast last week, and he talked about working out with you this offseason and some of the things that he's done from a physical standpoint. I'm interested to get your viewpoint on him. What does he look like over the course of the last few months as you've been working out with him?
Yeah, I mean, he's definitely taking a lot more seriously. I think he knows his role. He could be a starter, and when he got to play last year, he did very well in games. So, really when you look at him, he's 6'8". I always joke with him, call him Treebeard from Lord of the Rings, the walking trees. That's just how big this guy is. That's how much room he takes up, how massive he is. And I think once he gets a few games under his belt to get some confidence going, and then, he'll go to the next level.
You played next to him last year in that playoff game. What did you see from him, even on film?
Big D was playing. I was still
right.
hurt.
That's right. You were coming back. So when you watched him, what did you see from him on film?
Like I said, man, he's so big. And when he lands his hands, he's got very strong hands and can do a lot of damage. So really, yeah, I mean, as far as the skill set is there, it's just getting experience and staying consistent, just like everything else.
So I want to ask you about another young offensive lineman on the roster. Brandon, I mentioned he's been doing some interviews even since the injury, and he talked about Andre Dillard and how he's gotten bigger, he's gotten stronger, he's put weight on. I'm excited to kind of get your vantage point here on Andre and just how far he's come in the last couple of months.
Yeah, I think with Dillard, as far as physically, he's definitely bulked up. Man, he's a wide guy. I mean, physically, he's different this year coming in. I think with Andre, as far as his talent and level and ability, his movement skills is pretty incredible. So once he gets, a game or two where he goes up there and puts those things on display, what he can do, it's going to be scary how good he can be.
So I brought up a couple times the O-line Masterminds. You guys are getting ready for the third annual event. Take us through how that came to be. I know that you and Duke Manyweather kind of put this whole thing together a couple years ago. Take us through that whole event and really what the goal is from the outset. Yeah,
I've been around Duke past, I guess since the beginning of my career, trained with him a few times. But really, I think it was the top 100 thing he saw where I was joking around saying we should form a right tackles union. And he texted me, he's like, man, we should do like a camp, a get together. I mean, Duke, he trains guys, day in, day out, pros, collegiate guys. So that's what he does. And, man, it was really just the way of getting all these guys in the one classroom. We learn from each other. We watch game tape. We go out in the field, we joke, and really just have a good time, and I guess form relationships, I guess, with these players, because usually after games you only get a handshake or two, and they have to part and go to the locker room. So really just a way to kind of get guys in a room and just share the O-line experience, so to speak.
Sure. I was down there with you guys last year. Brandon was down there. I know a few more of your teammates are scheduled to go down. We're a couple weeks away from the event, but who else is planning to join you down there in Frisco?
Depends on where they're at. I mean, I can understand this thing being a little bit different this year due to the circumstances, but obviously guys from my team, really just guys that just want to come, message me, and we'll get that scheduled out. We had a pretty good turnout last year. A bunch of pro guys, a few college guys. It was a good time, man. I look forward to it. Just seeing those guys. There's only a handful of us in the league. That played this position. So, really we just share our experience, to be honest with you.
Yeah, being down there last year and just being in the room with you guys and seeing, some of the best that do it in the NFL, just an awesome experience. And the last thing I want to ask you about, I had to ask you what's life like as a content creator now, man. Outside the lane is taking off. You've got great guests every week. You're making headlines every week. What's it been like on the other side of the microphone for you?
I guess it's been pretty cool. I think I just try to generally. I don't take very many notes. I read up on them a little bit, but usually I'm fans of them anyway, so I kind of know a little bit about them. But just really ask questions that the average man would like to know. How was your experience in your career, different stuff. So really just a way to kind of get to know them a little bit better.
Let me just tell you, as someone who has to do it multiple times a week, you are so natural at letting guys just be themselves, and that is the hardest part of the whole deal. So you do a great job with it. It's really awesome. Tell fans where they can find it so they make sure they don't never miss an episode.
Yeah, I guess just go on my Instagram, Lane Johnson 65, same with Twitter. But yeah, it's been fun, and we're trying to broaden the list, from actors to baseball players, football players, kind of, slowly build that list up. So I think it'll be pretty interesting.
Well, Lane, thanks so much for joining us. I know you got a lot going on. Obviously, the clock's ticking until the start of the 2020 season, hopefully. So we'll talk to you again soon. Hopefully see you sooner than later.
Yes, sir. Appreciate you having me.
Now more than ever, we have come to understand the importance of celebrating special moments with those that we love. The Eagles Autism Foundation and Children's Hospital of Philadelphia want to help you commemorate these occasions. Throughout June, you'll have the unique opportunity to recognize someone special by posting a message on the video board at Lincoln Financial Field. Visit PhiladelphiaEagles.com/Eagles Autism Foundation to learn how to celebrate with a shout-out. Great stuff from Lane, who you could follow on Twitter just like I do, at LaneJohnson65. And while you're at it, I'm at EaglesXOs. That's where I post all the podcasts I'm a part of and all of our X's and O's content that we produce at PhiladelphiaEagles.com. And you know how much I appreciate everybody that promotes this podcast on all forms of social media. That's one way to support the show, but the best way is to go onto Apple Podcasts or Stitcher, give us a rating, or even leave us a comment. Look, we're starting to get a little bit closer now, hopefully, to the start of the 2020 season. Hopefully, training camp just a few weeks away. If you've got a topic that you want us to hit on here in the show before training camp starts, now's the time. Jump on Apple Podcasts. Even if you want to just let us know how we're doing, if you like what you've heard over the last few weeks, jump on, leave us a review, leave us a question. We will answer it here on an upcoming show. And look, I want to quickly hit on the injury to Brandon Brooks. Obviously, it's a big loss for this Eagles offense, right? He's easily a top 3 guard in the NFL, and you could argue whether he's number 1 or not, but really it doesn't matter. He's a great, borderline elite player in this league with what he does in both the pass game and in the run game. Now, to me, when it comes to replacing a guy like Brandon, it's obviously going to be tough to get an equal performance, right? But who will try to fill in his shoes? Certainly, there's the possibility that they look to the free agent market or someone outside of the organization right now. But in terms of who's already in the building, the Eagles have a bunch of linemen that they've been developing. So let's just take a look at those guys right now. Obviously, the big one, and I brought him up earlier with Lane, is Matt Pryor. And when I talk about Brandon Brooks, one of the big things is his size. Brandon is a big dude, and Pryor, he's even bigger. I love what Lane said about comparing him to Treebeard from Lord of the Rings. I'd never heard of that before. That is outstanding. But Pryor, he's 6'6", he's 338 pounds, but it's not just his height and his weight with Matt. His arms are over 35 and a half inches. He's got 30 or 11 and a half inch hands. 11 and a half inches. Those things are like giant dinner plates. They are enormous. And no offensive lineman that I know of that was drafted in at least the last 12 years, and probably a little bit further back than that, has had bigger hands than that. Think about that. No offensive lineman drafted since, what is that now? That's 20. We just had 2020, so since 2008 has had bigger hands than Matt Pryor. And that hand size actually shows up on the film, because when he gets his hands on people, he is really, really tough to shed. He's got natural power. He's really strong on contact. He's tough to move off of his spot. And to me, and it's funny, we're actually going to talk about this a little bit next week on the Journey to the Draft podcast driven by AAA. This is a guy with all the natural tools, a lot of physical gifts who, still needed to come along a bit in the mental side coming out of college, right? A couple years ago out of TCU. But he had that positional versatility. He's lined up at all 4 offensive line spots outside of center in practice throughout his career, and that allowed him to stick on the roster early in his career as he developed. And if he couldn't do that, then he likely wouldn't be in this position that he's in now, and it's unlikely. We don't know where he would have been, but very unlikely that if he did not have that versatility, that he would have been able to stick early on. So that's why that versatility is so important, especially for guys that were not drafted in the first couple of rounds. Their ticket to make it on the roster early on is the ability to be a backup at a number of different spots, because they could be a swing tackle, they could be a tackle guard, all while they learn the ropes and are developed and groomed until they can prove themselves as a starter. And that's kind of where Pryor is at this point in his career, right? He's going to go into his 3rd season in the league. If it's all come together, I have to think he's going to be in the pole position entering camp for that right guard spot. But it's not just going to be handed to him, because there are a handful of other guys that'll be fighting for that job as well. Obviously, there's the rookie 4th round pick out of Auburn, Jack Driscoll. This is a kid also with versatility. He played right tackle just the last 2 seasons at Auburn, but he played both left tackle and left guard earlier in his career at UMass before that. And there are a lot of people who think, honestly, that he could slide inside down to center as well down later in his career. So again, following that same theme along, a young guy who can compete early on as he develops, be a serviceable backup at the very least, but he's going to have that starting potential early on, and he's going to try and compete for that job in the summer. I really like Driscoll a lot on film. He's smart, he's athletic, he's more strong than he is powerful. Real quick, I guess, what do I mean by that? Strength is your ability to hold your ground versus somebody that's trying to move you against your will, while power is your ability to move somebody else as they try to hold their ground, if that makes sense. So I think I've used the water analogy before, and this was something that a strength coach had given me a couple of years ago, and it's always kind of stuck with me, is, strength is rock solid, like ice. They're tough to move once it's frozen over, right? It's tough to move a block of ice and move that. Whereas power is like a fast-flowing river with that strong current that's going to blow anything away in its path. You're not going to stop running water, right? So running water equals power, strength equals that rock-solid ice. That's the way someone explained it to me a couple of years ago, and it's always kind of stuck with me since that in that manner. All right, so you've got Pryor, you've got Driscoll. Obviously, Driscoll's old teammate, another draft pick for the Eagles, Prince Tega Wanogho. He's been a tackle throughout his career on the left side down there for the Tigers. He's a really athletic kid. There's tools there. At times, while watching him, though, I did kind of wonder if he would be better as a guard. So that would be another guy I would keep an eye on. Last year's backup center, Nate Herbig. He's big and he's strong as well. I feel like he's going to get a shot. He's more in that Matt Pryor mold, and that he's got that size and physicality that a lot of people look for in the trenches. He's over 6'4". He's over 330 pounds. Another undrafted kid last year, Sua Opeta. He's going to compete as well. I watched Sua Opeta when he was down at UTEP. He's got a little bit of a different skill set than Herbig. He's more like a Jack Driscoll. He's 6'4". He's just over 300 pounds. And like I said, I studied Opeta, and the thing that stood out to me about him was that he was never on the ground, and that's a trait that a lot of people value along the offensive line. He's really athletic. He's really tough. And he backed that up, that athleticism, with what he did down at the combine back in 2019. He moves really well. I thought he had a really good summer last year as well, and he played his way into the team's plans for the future because he was onto the practice squad and then eventually the 53-man roster. And to me, the other big name that not enough people are talking about, I guess, in this equation is Jordan Mailata. He's already in place to be a big part of the team with the departure of Halapoulivaati Vaitai. A lot of people already have him penciled in, I guess, from the media side as the swing tackle for this team, the backup on both the left and right tackle spots for Andre Dillard and Lane Johnson. But could Jordan slide inside? He's a similar body type to Pryor, so it's not like that would be something that would keep him from sliding in. To me, it would be more that, look, he's spent all of his time learning how to play football, right? And he's been learning the offensive tackle spot. He was a left tackle only as a rookie. He did get more reps on the right side last summer and last fall, so trying to learn both tackle spots. To me, it would be all about just his comfort level with sliding inside, because it's a little bit of a different approach, right? The pass rushers are a little bit different on the inside. Things happen a little bit faster as you get a little bit closer to the ball. So we'll see. Look, like I said, losing Brandon Brooks is a big loss, but the Eagles have had the luxury right now, or have the luxury now, of time to try and figure this out and see who can step into this role. Whatever training camp looks like here this summer, they're going to have reps on the practice field to kind of get it sorted out, along with everything that happens off the field in their meeting rooms. It's certainly going to be one of the biggest things to watch this summer and to keep an eye on throughout training camp. And we will be bringing a lot of training camp coverage right here on the Eagle Eye in the Sky podcast, fueled by Gatorade. That is when it will make that transition to really a heavy Eagles focus. We'll still be talking X's and O's every single week in some way, shape, or form, but daily practice recaps, hopefully, here from the Eagle Eye in the Sky podcast, fueled by Gatorade. So great stuff this week from Lane Johnson. Really appreciate him joining us really in their off time, right? The players' off time, and he was able to join me for about 10, 12 minutes or so here on the podcast. Thanks so much to Lane, and for all of you out there listening, whether you're on Apple Podcasts or Stitcher, TuneIn, Spotify, Google Play, and of course on PhiladelphiaEagles.com and the Eagles mobile app. Thank you. And again, one more time, just take a few seconds, go rate the show, leave us a comment. Don't be afraid to leave a question on there as well, because I would love the ability to answer it here on the podcast. All that being said, I think that'll do it. Another show in the books here on the Eagle Eye in the Sky podcast, fueled by Gatorade. For everybody here at the Duffy House, I am Fran Duffy. We will talk to you next week.